Hi, this is Kylie Coo. Welcome to my studio. So in this video I will be making my page 6 of my concertina accordion journal. As usual, my page base will be a 4x5 piece of scrapbooking paper, but I've also got two smaller pieces there, as you'll see. And I will tell you shortly how we're going to be using them. But I'm going to be preparing my main page in the same way as usual, and that's by just building up some collage on it. Now I have an old drop sheet here. This is just a kind of newsprint type paper. It's from a flip chart, and all I'm doing now is putting down some matte medium. Now the scrapbooking paper really absorbs the matte medium, and so did the flip chart paper. I had to use a load of it, so yeah, this took a fair bit of glue to get the two to stick together, but that's fine. I just kept adding it on and eventually got there. It's just both absorb it so much, and as always I'm just going to make sure that they're both fully adhered. I think at times I had to go back and do the corners a little bit. So these two pieces I'm going to do the same. I'm going to attach just a piece of that same scrapbooking paper to each of these. I think on one I ended up tearing it just a little bit short, but that doesn't matter because there's still other layers to go on. Now I did make a little bit of a faux pas with my main page this week, but I'll explain a bit more about that towards the actual end of the video. You'll see what I mean. It's easier to show you rather than just to try and tell you about it. So basically these two extra pieces, one is going to form a pocket on my page and the other is going to form another mini journal or micro journal that will slip into the pocket, because although this is a concertina or accordion book, I'm now going to do the exact same on the other side. I keep referring to it as a concertina or accordion book because I think different places call this style by one name or the other. So yes, although this is that type of book or journal, I want it to be more like an ordinary journal, junk journal, whatever, where it has lots of interest attached to the page. So be it words or be it pockets and tags and that kind of thing. So that's really what I'm trying to achieve with this. So you'll see there that I simply tore down the edge of my page just with the ruler just to get the excess paper off. And I think it was fine at this stage, but later on I don't think I pulled it in enough. I don't think I tore enough off. So here's another piece of this same flip chart paper. This bit has a bit of colour on it. I think it's just been where I've maybe been gel printing, or I just used it as a brayer off sheet. So got a bit of colour on it and I thought, well, I may as well use this. I was going to make some tiny journals from this sheet, but I thought it's good for collage here. So there we've got both sides done. That one I'm only doing on the one side, and that one I've just put plain paper on the back of it because that will be the book cover. I've now got, this was a sheet. I had made these homemade stamps ages ago. I think I'd just been stamping the paint off and onto that sheet. It's just a piece of printer paper, so it's not very thick either. But I'm just going to collage some of this down for interest. There's another piece of what I think is a brayer off sheet just underneath there. It's in kind of greens, and I'm just going to put a little bit of that on as well. And again, that is just for a bit of interest. And again, I'll do this on both sides of my main page, and I also do it on the front of what will become the pocket and the front of what will become the little micro journal. So again, I just go over that with my palette knife just to make sure that I get all the glue from underneath and get it well adhered. So that's about 3.5 inches by about, I think that was about just over 2 there, 2.25 I think. So it was maybe something like 3.25 by 2.25. So I'm now using this sheet because this will form the pages of my journal. So I'm measuring this piece across at 2 inches. I'll just tear this down. I think I was double checking my measurements. Oh no, I couldn't see it where I'd actually marked it. So I just pull that down, I pull another one down, just tear this off. And then I'm going to form the pages of my little journal from this. So I think I cut these to, or tear these to 3 inches. Yep. And again, I will just tear these down. When I see them torn down, I think I thought I'd got it wrong because it just looked too small, but actually they are the perfect size to go in the tiny journal. That was me looking up, getting the sun on it so I could actually see where the pencil mark was. So I'm just going to roughly fold that, being careful because it's not dry yet. Fold my pages, and I end up doing a very, very simple binding on this, and that's how they will fit together. I decide though that it's not quite enough pages. I take that white bit off the edge there. I just used this sheet. It colour-wise it doesn't necessarily fit in, but I just wanted something that had a bit of paint or colour on it already. So that's just kind of 4 sheets, 4 pieces that I've put in there. So that will be big enough because I don't want it too thick, because I do want it to be able to fit into the pocket. So I'm just spreading out some pieces of deli paper here that I've obviously had under things before, and I'm going to do the ink. Now this is a Dr. P.H. Martin's ink. It's Van Dyke Brown, and this is it in sepia. It's usually a different make of sepia that I use, but I thought I'd try the Dr. P.H. Martin's. I know the Van Dyke Brown isn't great. From the moment I got that, it's had funny little grainy bits in it, so I know it's not going to be perfect, but I decided to use it. I've torn the top off the pocket there because I want it to have a nice rough edge, tearing down the side a bit as well, doing that at this stage just so it will pick up the ink. And you can see there I'm just roughly looking at how it will all fit together. So here we go with the Van Dyke Brown. I gave it a good shake because these have sat for a little while, and actually the stopper on this was pretty much jammed. But I had a pipette, I never know what you call them, sitting about from earlier in the week, from when I did my Mindful Monday video, and yeah, so I just used that to get the ink out. So I've put that down. I don't know, the consistency of it is a bit strange. As I say, this particular one, I've never been happy with it. I can make it work though for something like this. So spreading it over the main page there, over the journal, and over what will become the pocket, adding a little bit more. And this just doesn't flow in the same way when I add the water to it as has happened with my other inks, including some of the Dr. P.H. Martin. Some of them have been absolutely fine. It's just this one has always been a bit of a bugbear in a sense. There I am. I'm going over the back of the pocket just so it's got some colour on it. I don't want it to be totally white. And now I'm going to add the sepia. And It's okay, but I felt at times that this was a bit kind of thick and almost gloopy in places. Again, I gave it a very good shake. I don't think I added water to this. I didn't feel inclined to add water in the way that I normally would. There I am, just adding some of that colour now to the back of the book. And I think I put a bit on the back of the pocket as well. I certainly try and make sure that I get all the edges darkened. So I'm going to dry this before I flip that one over, and I just dab the book there, and actually it's given it quite a nice mottled effect. Again, that flip chart paper just kind of absorbed the ink a bit. Just dabbing off the excess there, and you can see the difference. I'm still quite happy with this. And now I'm just going to do the back of the page. I put too much on, so I've taken that piece of pink tissue paper and I've just put the excess onto that. I just wanted anything that would take the excess off, and that's actually given it quite a nice pattern. I quite liked that, but again I will just dry that. So now I go and I add my usual stenciling to this. So I've got, it's the Arteza gold paint, and I'm going to do the pocket, the little book, and then I will do my main page. I decide with this to, I think I'm just looking there at, I think that's the book, and I'm just deciding which way I wanted it as the cover, and which is the front of the cover and which is the back, but it really doesn't matter, and I think probably come the time I change it anyway. So I end up actually putting a bit more gold on this than I've done in previous weeks. I think it was because I simply wasn't entirely happy with the page, but I have to say that when the gold is added to it, the colours that are down there, the gold really makes it work. So in the end I was quite happy with the way that it looked. But the gold just goes so well with it. I mean, this would be lovely as a kind of autumn coloured thing, for want of a better word, a thing. So yeah, you'll see here that compared to previous weeks, I put far more down, and I also go in with it a lot thicker. I go over it a couple of times. And it just makes a bit of a feature of the page. I'm not sure what I'm going to come back and do on these pages, if anything at all. In many ways, I quite like them just as is, you know, every page in the book. Obviously some I've added some words to and others I haven't, but you know, I like them almost as small mini pieces of art in their own right, so I'm not sure if I'll add anything to them in future, but at some point I will come back and I'll put something on the back of the tag from last week's page, and I'll also come back at some point and do some work in the micro journal that I did a couple of weeks ago, and also in the micro journal that I'm doing today. I think I go back in and add a little bit on each bottom corner there, and I just feel that that has really lifted that page. So there was a few of you have said to me that you kind of have inks and haven't really used them much. So, you know, hopefully at some point in the future I might be doing a bit more with inks. There I've taken that pink paper with the ink on it, and I've just lifted up the excess gold from the stencil. And again, that's actually, it's turned out quite nice. One of those little bonus things that we sometimes get. So I've got some thread here, and I'm just going to take a bit of that off. Just by chance I found that today. I'd gone for a plain one and saw that packet of brown, so I thought, right, I'll just use that because that will go in nicely as well. And all I'm doing, I'm taking an awl, you could take anything sharp, and I'm just going to punch or poke really 2 holes in this. Nothing more complicated. It looks there as if I'm going to stab myself, but you know, I was quite careful. And all I'm going to do is roughly measure out what I need. Now normally if I was just putting a simple binding on, I'd do about 2.5 times the length, but I also want this to be able to wrap around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it was about 6 times that full width of the book, just to give you a rough idea. So I'm simply going to poke the thread. I was simply running that through my fingers there. It is a waxed thread and it just helps the wax warm up a bit and makes it easier to push through the paper. That's when you can keep a hold of the thread. So just push one end through the top and one through the bottom. Just had to poke that hole a little bit. Again, the paper wasn't entirely dry on this, so it was kind of closing in a little bit. All I'm doing now is getting them to roughly the same length. I just put a knot in it, then one more knot, and because it's waxed, it generally holds pretty well with just the 2 knots like that. And there we've got little book. Just wrapping the binding round. You'll see in just a moment, doing a quick tie of that, and then I go back to my card. So looking at that, looking at how the book will fit in, I'm going to do as I did the other week when I did it with the band, and just keep the book in there as best I can, because the pocket needs to open wide enough to have that. So I didn't want to just glue it right down and then discover that it was too tight for the little book to fit in. So just putting some of that 3-in-1 glue down the 2 edges and along the bottom. Then I just look to put it in place, making sure that I don't get any on the actual book itself. And then it's just a case, I sit and hold it. If it had been fully dry, I might have put something on top, but I would have been in danger of actually lifting some of the paint off, so I just hold it there with my fingers. Fortunately, the 3-in-1 dries pretty quickly. So you can see there is just a slight gap there to allow the book to go in. So I suddenly remembered I had the gold to put round this, so I just take my finger and go round the outside edges. The sun came out at this point again. It's nice to see. Went a little bit under the page there, so I just continued on with the gold. But you can really see how when the sun's on it, it really shines up brightly. Just showing you the cloth there that I'm using. I've had a few people ask about that as well. I think it's just a sort of linen. I got it in a fat quarter pack from Hobbycraft. It came with kind of Hessian, just described as natural materials, natural fabrics. So I'm going to attach these, and I start to look and I notice that it's slightly taller than the other pages. So I'm just looking and thinking, how's that? And I think it was simply because when I was putting the collage down on it, I just basically, I didn't tear it back far enough. At one point I was concerned that I was going to rip the card too small, and I've ended up doing the opposite. So, but I discover something else as well. So all I've done there is to try and offset it a little bit, so part of the extra length will be at the bottom and a tiny bit at the top. There, I'm just adjusting it again. So there's a fraction overhang both top and bottom. So I'm getting my piece of linen, which will act as a spine, getting that into place on one side, and then I'm going to do it on the other. Always takes me a little while to get this glue out. I don't know if it's just because it's cold in the studio and it was just difficult to get out, although I do try and keep the container upside down. So there I am, I'm turning it over, just dabbing the glue a bit, and I'm looking, loving the light on it, and then when I close it I realise that not only is it too tall, it's too wide. So is that a problem? Yes and no. It could still work without it, but I think what I'm going to do, and I'll do this at the start of next week's video, is just go down that side and take it off a bit and just do a bit of a kind of, not a repair job, but just adjust it. So that's it for this week. I do hope you enjoyed watching. Do take care. Bye for now.